Okay, I am live. I am live with Amy Dingman from A Farmish Kind of Life, who has a homestead in Minnesota and
Minnesota.
Minnesota up in the
Yeah.
cold tundra.
Yes,
And yeah, and you also have a podcast that you do,
I do.
and you're also an author.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've written some books, so that's pretty cool. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've homeschooled your kids, which I think is super cool.
We did
For
that. Yeah.
one of the reasons why I think it's really cool is because it seems like you were doing it before it was like cool, actually. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Doing it
So
before it was cool. I was a trendsetter. That's what it was. That's what it was.
yeah, right on. Um, but the first thing I'd like to chat about you, or excuse me, I'd like to ask is just that right about the time I was kind of getting into your podcast and listening to your content is when you decided to like step away for a period of time. And I was kind of like
I did
bummed
that.
actually. I was like, damn, I was kind of digging it, right? And so you stepped away and then you were gone for a few months. And then I guess my question is what was the reason for stepping away? What did you learn while you were away? And why did you come back?
So stepping away was, oh man. You mentioned that I homeschooled my kids. We homeschooled our kids all the way through. And so last year was when my youngest son graduated. So we were done, right? Homeschooling is over. The boys are adults. They're living their life. They're doing their thing. And I had it in my head that when my kids are done homeschooling, I have to do something different, right? I've got to mark this time as ta-da, there's something different that I'm doing. And I just had that in my head. Nobody said that to me. And so I was kind of working with that and trying to figure out where do you go from here. And my friends have a business and they were looking to expand their business. And so they asked me, would you like to take a job kind of in our office? You kind of know what's going on here. I think you'd be a good fit. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And at the same time, I was just, I'd been running a farmer's kind of life for several years. We'd had the homestead for several years, and I was just kind of at that point where I have to figure out what I want to do next. I just felt like I was, on the edge of a cliff trying to figure out where do I go. And so I took this job and I thought it was going to be awesome. And the first few months, it was awesome because I hadn't worked outside the home for over 20 years.
Hmm.
And so this was a whole new experience getting back into it. And I had my little lunchbox and I get in the car and I go to work and I was part of the commute and all that. And I felt very awesome. And for about 3 months, it was really great. And then after that, it's like all of a sudden I realized all the stuff that I couldn't do. Like I can't do all the things all the time. There's only so much time in the day. And I think stepping away from a farmer's kind of life, not only the podcast and the blog and the YouTube channel and all that, but I felt like I was actually, I've kind of explained it to some people as running away from home. Like I almost felt like I was running away from the actual homestead and going out and doing something new. And I did that for a few months and just realized, wait a second, this is not what I want. I want to be home. I want to be doing those things. We bought our homestead and moved to the country for a reason. There was something we were trying to do here. And there wasn't, like when we were homeschooling our kids and we were all home, there was just this connection and there was this way that our family worked together and a way that our household worked and a way that our homestead worked. And there wasn't an expiration date on that. Like I had it in my head, my kids are going to graduate and now stuff has to be different. And it didn't have to be different. I didn't have to make it different because it already was different because the kids grew up. But it was just, you asked what I learned. My aunt, I think, put it best when we were talking about what exactly it was that I learned. She said, sometimes you learn the most about what you want from experiencing something you don't like more than you would if you're experiencing something you like. So if you're at your homestead all the time and it's great and wonderful, you almost forget how great and wonderful it is until you step away from it and you're like, oh yeah, I want that back. Almost like the kid that runs away from home, like the little 5-year-old that packs up his little backpack and he's like, I'm running away from home because I don't want to do this. And then you get out in the cold and you want your blankie and you want your mom, and you realize how
Yeah.
great it was. Yeah, so after about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, I don't know how long it was. I realized, this I want to go back. I want to, do what I was doing. And yeah, it was crazy how it all worked out. And then the funny thing is stepping back and stepping away from what I was doing has almost given me more, like, I just want to explode further ahead in what, the path that I was on, and it's almost
Mm.
like I couldn't see that path until I stepped back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to step back and
Yeah.
refocus and figure out what I wanted to do, and that's what I did, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess you need to see sometimes what what you had in order to really
Yeah.
appreciate it when you step away,
Yeah.
And so how long have you been on your homestead there in Minnesota? You've been doing this for what, 20 years or more now?
No, we've been here at the farm, since 2011. Before that, when my husband and I first got married, 20 some years ago, we were in a small town right on Main Street, little tiny house. We lived there for a little while, and then we actually moved, to my parents' house and rented from them because we knew we were gonna buy the farm. And so we were in my parents' basement renting there, and they are in the country, and it was woods and creek and all of that. And so we did have chickens there and different things like that, but I didn't feel like we were doing the homestead thing. I think because I thought, "Oh, we're gonna get to our farm and have our big barn and all that, and that's gonna be the homestead." But yeah, 2011 was when we got here. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
And so did you homeschool your children all the way from K through 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's the whole run. That's
The
cool.
whole package. They did go to, we have a program in our state where they can go to, college, junior and senior year of high school, and it's paid
Mhm.
for by the state. So they did do that, but, we were still technically homeschoolers, I guess, because they weren't enrolled in public school ever. So, but yeah, other than that, it was all home.
Right, and, they're now adults, right?
Yeah,
Through
yeah.
adulthood, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter, she's homeschooling her children,
Okay.
and her oldest is she's got 4 children, and her oldest is, gonna be 10 soon, so
Okay.
she's been doing it for that length of time, and,
Yep.
it's been a process of learning for her as I'm
Oh,
sure it
yeah.
was for you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If I was to, or not maybe me, but just somebody came up and said, "Hey, Amy, I'm thinking of homeschooling my kids. What advice would you give me that I should know that you didn't necessarily know, but you're going to give me some inside ball? What would you tell them?"
I think I would say, uh I think first and foremost, it's most important to know why you're doing it, because if you don't know why you're doing it, it's very easy to lose sight of the path, because there are days in homeschooling that you're gonna be like, "Mm-mm, we're not doing this no more." You wanna pull your hair out, your kids wanna pull their hair out, and so I think having that just agreement. I mean, if you're in a relationship with someone, you've decided to do this together, just being there to support each other, knowing why you're doing it. I think that's probably the the one thing that probably saved me a couple of times, was like, "Why are we doing this?" And my husband saying, "This is why we're doing it." And yeah, I think the best thing that, when I look back, I think the best thing about choosing to homeschool was just the amazing amount of time we had. And by that, I mean, we had time together, like, as a family, we had time
Mhm.
together that we would not have had if the kids were in public school, but also time to explore the things we wanted to explore.
Mm.
And I mean us, as in, my kids could explore what they wanted to, I could explore what I wanted, like, we all had stuff we wanted to dig into, and because we were all interested in different things, all the people in our family got to see all of those things, and we all kind of learned together and, experienced all of that together. So, man, the time, you just, like, you don't get that back, and I'm so glad, like, that is the thing that I would say was the best part of the entire experience, was just the
Right on.
time that we had. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the value in it now. I didn't necessarily see the value in it prior to the way things kind of are socially.
Right.
now in
Yeah.
society. But like you said, there's just that element of time that you get to spend with your kids,
Yeah.
and your day is structured in a way that you can basically, I would assume you would agree with this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you could have them knock out their schoolwork in 2 to 3 hours,
Yeah.
and boom, the rest of the day
Yep.
is theirs.
Yep.
Whereas when you're going to school, your kids are gone for 9 hours. They're sitting
Yeah.
on a bus, or they're doing some kind of BS somewhere,
Yeah.
or going from class to class, and
Right.
they spend so much time away from the home getting
Mhm.
taught by people who are not probably even teaching them what you would want them to be taught. So
Yeah.
I really see the value in it now. And like I say, I'm very glad that my daughter has chosen to do that. And like I say, this is something that she's chosen to do, her and her husband, for like 10 years now.
Yeah.
Well, he's only been since like kindergarten, but that would be like, 4 or 5 years now that they've been
Right.
homeschooling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
It's
just real.
interesting because I don't like when we decided to homeschool, there wasn't all the stuff going on that's going on now. I mean, this was 2006 when we were starting to talk about homeschooling. And so it when we decided to homeschool, it was just I thought it sounded cool, so let's try it. It was not I'm anti-public school. It wasn't anything like that. Our kids always had the option to go to public school. It
Right.
was never, you can't go to public school. It was, yeah, and I wonder now, like, if I was having children now, would it be the same? Would it I mean, I'm sure we would decide to homeschool, but I'm sure our reasons would be different, just
Right.
because I feel like things are different now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I find that so interesting. Like, when I just analyze my own beliefs and the things that as you gain a little bit more
mhm.
awareness in
Yeah.
life, your perspective changes on things so much.
Yeah.
And, I came from having the background of myself going to public school. And
Yep.
based on that, well, it worked for me. So I guess it's okay for my
Right.
kids, right? And
Yeah.
it was okay for my kids to a point. But things have obviously, since my kids got out, I mean, it's quite dramatically
Yeah.
changed with
Yeah.
regard to some of the curriculum that's being, put out there. And like I say, that would be a big determining determining factor for me
Right.
to say, hey, look, we need to change things, because
Yeah.
my wife and I both, had jobs professionally when we met. And
Okay.
so we were both working outside of the home.
Mhm.
And then at some point, she became stay-at-home mom. We decided, when we moved to our farm here like 22 years ago,
Mhm.
she basically quit her professional job and came to be stay-at-home mom. But it wasn't like she homeschooled the kids, but at least
Mhm.
there was a parent in the
Right.
home. And
Yeah.
there, we weren't just having latchkey kids come home to an empty house, like,
Right.
like I
Right.
did and so many other kids did.
Right.
And I'm
Yep.
not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that, I'm harmed for it or whatever. It's just, there is so much value in being able to like have a parent home. And
Yeah.
then if you're the parent that's actually teaching your kids, you get to like structure what they learn, and they
Mhm.
get to have a more of a say in what they learn,
Oh, yeah.
instead of it just being some BS, common core curriculum or
Yeah.
whatever. Right.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because I would set up things to teach the kids, like, "This is what we're gonna talk about today," and they would take the conversation so much further than I ever would have thought, and you forget that your kids are learning stuff apart from you. I remember, like, I can picture them in the living room, and we're talking about something, and they know so much more about the topic than I do, and I had no idea. Just because of stuff they'd been researching on their own. And that was so cool, for them to be able to say, no, mom, you're wrong, and for that to be okay, like things have changed, or this is what I read, or let's discuss this. This is a different way to look at that. Like, I am just so glad that we could have those conversations and they could feel free to, discuss stuff like that instead of having a teacher go, no, that's not what,
Right. Right.
so
Gosh, um, I first came to learn of you because of your affiliation on, imagine that, Jack Spirko's
oh,
survival podcast, when you were one of his expert
yes,
council members,
yep,
and you were a subject matter expert in homeschooling. And that's the
yeah,
first time I'd ever heard your name, and I'd listen to his expert counsels and stuff like that. And then I started to hear you on with Nicole Sauce.
Mhm.
And then, like I say, I transitioned into like, hey, maybe I should check her like podcast out or whatever. And I did, and I really liked it. And one of the reasons why I liked it is just because it seemed like you weren't afraid to talk about real issues and show a little bit of vulnerability with regard to like maybe decisions that you've made that are, like
Yeah.
life things that
Yeah.
actually happen to people instead of being
Yeah.
someone who just puts on a front, so
Right.
I appreciate that. But interesting homeschooling.
The other thing that's really interesting, I think, is when my kids did decide that they were going to take advantage of this 2 years of free college, free, I'm using air quotes here because someone has to pay for it. It was really interesting for them to go from being set up in a house where when we were doing, structured school, they could knock it out so fast, and like you said, then the rest of the day is theirs to explore what they want. And then to have that college experience, and they were doing online college, so they didn't even go on campus or anything. It was all online. They were absolutely floored with the amount of busy work and the amount of why are we doing, like, what does this have to do with the purpose of the class or things like that. And so it was really interesting because I went to public school. I went to public college, obviously. And so to me, that's normal, I guess. Like that's just part of my experience. But then to see them where that wasn't their experience, to look at that and go, what in the actual, like this doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it just makes you look at how everything's set up and be like, why are we doing this way? There's, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think that there's a big kind of a bigger move toward people taking more control of that. And like I say, I think it's great when they do, because the next generation is being taught by people who were taught by people who were, and it's just kind of this perpetual like slide down, into depravity.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good when parents can kind of take that back a little bit. So kudos to you.
I think it'll be interesting if my kids have kids, what they will do. And I asked my kids, I'm like, so will you homeschool your kids? And they're, they're 19 and 20. So they're like, I'm not having kids, they're at that point in their life, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, if that happens. So
yeah, right on. You got 2 boys, right?
2 boys.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So,
So being in Minnesota, I'm a little interested in this. Yeah. I'm interested in this because I don't live in a climate like you. And I have had some people actually ask, hey, what are, some good breeds of cold weather chickens and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I had Ariel on from Finance, and she lives at 6,000 feet in Wyoming, and she's got like these Icelandic chickens that she uses and seems to do well for her. But I mean, I have no experience with that because about as cold as it gets here is like maybe 25 Fahrenheit,
Oh, really? 25 above.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Above. Yeah, no, it doesn't get.
You have to make that distinction if you're in Minnesota, above or below. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I think it got to be like 9 degrees here like once or twice, and then
that was real cold.
Like, dude, like pipes are freezing and like everything's like, it's just shutting down around here.
Because you're not set up for that.
Mm-mm.
That's Yep.
No. So
I always find that funny when, because we deal with tons of snow and super cold temperatures. It's always very funny to me how people in Minnesota can get a little bit cocky about, when people in Texas are dealing with super cold temps, and or they get an inch of snow and they can't drive in it. Well, hello, we're from Minnesota. We are set up for that. Not everywhere is set up for that. So it always makes me giggle a little bit when people like just,
we got it's about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, or maybe more, I don't know. We got a storm that came through that was very untypical for us because I've been here on this property now for 22 and change, and we've seen snow stick like 3 times.
Oh, really?
And usually it's like maybe like that, and it's like gone in a couple hours. This was like super cold, and we got like 9 inches of snow, and it just that was a lot for us. And 9 inches, and it was like all my trees. I got like I got a bunch of ukes out here on the property, and I still got tons of storm cleanup out there to deal with.
Oh
But
my gosh.
when stuff like that happens, we're just not,
Yeah.
stuff's not
Yeah.
used to it, and we wind up with issues.
Oh,
But
jeez. We have
yeah,
so much snow here. I'm looking out the window. We have so much snow here right now. I don't know. Like, we just keep plowing and there's nowhere to put the snow. We're just like pushing it and pushing it. We have a giant snow pile that's probably 12 or 15 feet tall. It's just
yeah,
ridiculous. It's,
yeah.
yeah.
This dude's laughing at
Oh,
Minnesotans. Come
come
on
on
now.
now.
Yeah,
I know
right?
who you are. Stop.
Yeah,
That's okay.
man.
You can laugh at us Minnesotans. It's fine.
Yeah, that's right. Go play some hockey. So back to the chickens. What
Yeah.
what would you say is probably something that you would recommend, or what do you have
Oh,
that you
man.
have?
I'm
I
trying to
mean,
think of what breeds we actually have because I
hmm,
think the batch we have right now is about 3 years old, so I'm trying to think of I know, like, Buff Orpingtons would be a big,
hmm,
breed here. Those are pretty popular. Ah, man, I should have been prepared for this question. I'm trying to think of the breeds. I know we have some up north people in the comments here, so in the chat, so throw out some breeds if you
yeah.
can think of them. Trying to think
Yeah,
of what I
if
have.
there's anybody in the chat that has some recommendations, throw them up there, because I mean I'm actually quite interested in it because I'm just not that familiar. I know that like ones where they don't have as much comb on the top,
Yeah.
and they're kind of the more rose, thing, and smaller wattles, and
Do
they're
you have
supposed to be.
chickens?
Oh yeah, yeah. We
So
got like 30.
what kind of chickens do you have?
We've got primarily Novagens right now, and I really like that breed because they're an excellent egg layer. They've got great feed conversion ratio, so
Okay.
you don't hardly have to feed them like anything, and they just perform.
Yeah.
They're a super friendly and docile bird, and I've just been very, very impressed with them. They can actually handle the heat that we get here. I didn't lose any of the chickens to heat. I actually lost like 2 Buff Orpingtons and a couple
Okay.
of others last year in
Sure.
the heat. And
That makes sense because they work really well here.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's primarily what we have, but we do have
Okay.
a couple of black Australorp. I've got
Okay.
a
Yep.
Buff Orpington left, and I've got some Dominique, and then I've
Okay.
got um, an egg. What am I thinking here?
I can never remember the breeds that we have.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
so
drawing a blank
exciting
for
when we
some
pick
reason.
them out of the catalog, and then 3 years later, I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what you are."
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
first breed that you talked about, I've never even heard of that breed. So
Oh
that
yeah.
must
No,
not be something we can even get here.
no, you can certainly get it. It's you can just order it, and that's where we got it. Was from
Right.
a hatchery. We got it from Freedom Ranger Hatchery, and
Okay.
there's 5 different Novagen strains of that
Okay.
particular breed. So we got the Novagen Browns, and
Okay.
they're a cross between a uh, a Rhode Island Red and a Rhode Island White, and it's a hybrid
Oh,
breed bred specifically for their egg laying
okay.
productivity, and they are just like crazy egg layers. I mean, they'll just
Awesome.
keep knocking it out. They lay like 395 eggs in the
Nice.
first 72
Nice.
weeks,
Wow.
and so they're jumbo size. They're
Yeah.
they're like all of them are super huge, and
Nice.
yeah, they're really good hens. So I'm pretty pleased with them. I just like
Cool.
how docile they are too. I don't
Yeah.
really like birds when they're wild and they get
Right.
everybody else all spun up when you walk in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I like it.
So, what's some of your bigger projects that you've got coming up, or what are you looking to maybe do on your homestead moving forward?
We This year is actually gonna be a crazy year because last year, because I took the job outside the home and that turned into kind of a train wreck of not having any time, um, and my husband had a little mishap with his motorcycle and ended up breaking 4 of his ribs, so he was
Mm,
in recovery for the summer and the fall. There's not a lot of stuff that happened on the farm last year. There's a whole bunch of stuff we had planned, and it just did not happen because I wasn't
yeah,
here and he couldn't do anything because he was in recovery. So I feel like this year is almost we have to reach backwards into like what we have to get caught up on and then move forward in the projects we were going to do last year that we were going to add that we didn't.
mhm,
We are adding rabbits this year for sure. That was something
Hmm.
we were supposed to do last year, and now we're gonna do it this year, and I know that another one of our big projects is to build a smokehouse because we've wanted to have a smokehouse forever because we raise all of our own meat, and we butcher and process here on the farm, everything except for beef. We don't raise beef. But yeah, we like to smoke the meat, a lot of the meat, and we just have a little smoker right now. And so my husband has always said, if we could build a smokehouse, that'd be so awesome. It'd be so much more efficient. And so this is the year that we're going to do that. That's
Yeah.
what we're saying. Anyway, yeah,
So you raise rabbits now. Are those for your consumption, or do you
yeah, yeah.
feed your animals with them or something?
We
Yeah.
could. I mean, if we have enough, we could probably. We have dogs here, so
Yeah.
yeah, we could do
Have
that
you
too.
been raising those for a few years? I
We
know there's a lot of people have problems kind of getting them to breed and all that sort of thing.
we don't have them yet. We're starting them this year, so it's
Mhm.
going to be a whole new project. So I'm excited to see how it goes. Nate's and Aaron, I see them in the chat here from Two Chicks Homestead. There, yep. Now he's commenting. They're kind of our go-to for information about the rabbits. So they have rabbits, and they're the ones that are going to teach me how to do this rabbit thing. So I'm excited.
Right. Yeah, I think considered it, but it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, how many other things, do I need to
Right.
consider?
Right.
It's not like I don't have enough things going on around
Yeah.
here, but it's definitely, to me, it seems like a really viable possible solution to maybe providing, at least if nothing else, food for your dog,
Yeah.
because I like to feed, my dog as natural as I can. We
Yep.
feed her kibble and stuff, but I mean, we do take and get some of the stuff that we don't eat, and we'll freeze dry it, and we feed her those quite
Yeah.
regularly, which is very healthy for her. Plus we give her eggs. We have an abundance of that, so that's I think rabbit meat would be pretty awesome. I know John
Yeah.
Willis
Oh,
feeds
sure.
his big killer dogs that he's got.
Yeah.
Those things are scary looking, man. I'm telling you. Have you ever been out to John's place?
I have not yet. I will someday, but I have not yet.
Yeah.
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 I'm
Are you?
excited. Right now we have we have chickens and ducks, and normally we would have pigs and turkeys, and what else have we had here? We've had pheasants, we've had goats, we've had horses, we've had all sorts of different things. And what I think is funny is before we moved to the farm, we had it all figured out, the animals we were going to have and how it was going to work. And we were going to like these certain animals and not like these other animals. And when we moved to the farm, goats were the thing. I was like, I'm having goats. They are going to be the greatest thing. And my husband really wanted horses. And so we got here and we got horses, we got goats. It's going to be awesome. And horses and goats are the first thing that left the farm because we realized, you know what? No, that's not our thing. And I
Right.
did not want pigs.
Huh.
But we got pigs, and now pigs are my favorite animal. I love
Aren't
having
they
them on the
awesome?
farm. They are
I
awesome.
love pigs.
I love them. They're so cool.
Yeah.
I love the personality. They're so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Love
they're
them.
so hilarious.
They are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that like everyone that we've ever had, it seems like the dogs, they like fall in love with them,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been your scenario too, but like the dogs, they bond with them, and then
Yeah.
they're sad when you got to butcher them out or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, pigs are super cool.
They are cool. I love them.
What
And
what did
this place used to be a pig farm, so actually, or they had pigs there. They had pigs and cows here originally, and
Mhm.
so it was set up so nicely
Mm,
for pigs, like it had really good fencing, and it's
mhm.
they got a huge area to be in, but it's fenced well, so they're not going to be running off into the neighbor's cornfield or anything. So yeah.
Right. What don't you like about horses? You said you didn't like having horses.
We only have 5 acres here, and
Mhm.
so we don't have the space to make our own hay, obviously. Not enough, to feed them. And so we had to buy the hay, but my husband got that. I'm not a horse person. I don't like horses, aren't my thing. My husband
Mhm.
wanted them, we got them, and I think he thought he would have more time to ride because that's why he wanted them, was just to ride, and he just didn't have the time for them. And so they became, like people will say, pasture ornaments. That's
Mhm.
really what they were. They were just there, and we were feeding them, and we got to a place where we're like, okay, we need to make some decisions. What's staying on the farm and what's not. And so, yeah, the horses went because, yeah,
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. We used to have horses, when I, on the farm where I grew up for a
okay,
time, and I I didn't really much care for them. I mean, we didn't
Yeah.
really need them for the cows that we had. We didn't
Yeah.
use them to round them up or whatever. So they were just basically hay burners,
Yes.
and that's one thing that I really can't have on my property is something that's not of value or use. I'm not
Right.
just going to feed a pet,
Right.
without getting something in return. So I fully get that.
Yeah.
The
It
goat
very
thing
much
is,
was this farm became a farm where if you are here, you need to work. There needs to be a purpose that you're here because,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people I wouldn't say the homesteading community, but I would say the people that like to watch homesteading content, right? Where
I know what you mean.
they look at like
Yep.
chickens like their pets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get it, man. If that's your jam and you want to treat your chicken like a pet, that's
Yeah.
fine. But don't look at me because I don't.
Right. Yeah.
I grew up looking at that animal like it has a purpose.
Yes.
It's to lay eggs.
Yep.
It's to be meat, to be
Right.
eaten.
Yeah.
And I don't draw that attachment that other people have. But, it's interesting in this Instagram, TikTok real world,
Yep.
right? Where they dress them up and they, and it's like,
Yes.
I get it, man. People are whatever, but it's just,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, right?
I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember telling a friend, an acquaintance, she had asked why we had gotten rid of one of our animals. And I said, well, it doesn't serve a purpose,
Mhm.
and she's like, well, the purpose is that they're a companion and they're fun to look at and play with. And I'm like, not here.
You're right. Yeah.
I only have so much money to feed so many things. So
Yeah. No, that's somebody who's actually doing the thing.
yeah.
And realizes that there's a cost associated with doing the thing, right?
Isn't that weird that it costs
yeah.
money to do, to do the things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know what your take is on that, but like just homesteading has kind of become this niche
Yeah.
rather than something that, people had done for years. And then, it was more or less just called, hey, I got a farm or whatever, right? It wasn't like, hey, I'm a homesteader.
Yeah.
But now it's this whole thing because of the media,
now.
right?
Yeah. I often wonder what would happen if, my relatives from days past came back and were like, you're doing what? You're taking video of what you're doing and putting it on YouTube to teach people, like what? Like people are
Right.
taking pictures of their chickens. It used to just be what you did. It was a way of life. It was how you lived, is how you survived, is how you ate. And now it's become a thing with hashtags and filters and all of that,
Yeah.
which if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I think realizing that there's that way of doing it. And then there's the other way, which is I'm going to eat this animal. And if you're not working on my farm, you don't get to stay. You need a job or you have to go.
Yeah. And I treat the animals when they're here. I treat them the best that I can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it seems like the same people that would want to say, oh, that's, I don't see how you could eat that animal or whatever. They're the same person that's going to go eat a chicken McNugget from an animal that was raised in a CAFO.
Right.
Instead of saying, hey, I want to have more of a direct hand in the food that I consume. Therefore, it's going to give me more respect for that animal.
Yeah.
And I just, people, they don't see that. They're just like, oh, I could never eat that animal, but I'll go to In-N-Out Burger or whatever,
Right. It is really interesting. I have a lot of friends who were vegetarians and then they see like small farms and how they raise their animals and how it's a completely different process.
Mhm.
And they've actually either I have some friends who have decided, you know what, I think I'm going to add meat to my diet as long as it's, raised well and treated well. And other friends of mine are still vegetarians, but they will raise animals for meat. So it's interesting to see, when you dig into that and you see it doesn't have to be like you see on the news with the giant farms and,
right.
McDonald's and all of that. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Nate says that the animals eat better than we do. And I think there's damn near some truth to that because
Yeah.
I know at least in my case, the chickens, they get all kinds of stuff to eat and
Yeah.
I don't really hold anything back from them. I find it also very interesting that, you look at all the things that they say that animals shouldn't eat
Yes.
is all of the things that I feed my animals. Every
Yeah.
goddamn bit
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything. I mean,
Yeah.
everything. I'll let them choose.
Right.
It's a free like type of a
Yeah.
relationship as far as that's concerned. I'll just throw it out there if you want it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something you decided it was good for you. And
Yeah.
chickens are pretty smart,
They
despite the
are.
fact they've got brains this big. They know what they like,
Yeah.
right? And they know what makes them
Yeah.
sick and not feel good.
Right.
So it's yeah, they do eat well. They do eat
Yeah.
well.
It is funny because I think there's truth to that. I think because I've seen that on my farm. You can't feed your animal that, but I I think the animals know that's well, there's always going to be that one animal that's kind of dumb, but I think, generally speaking, you know what's
Mhm.
good for you and you know what's not. And I feel like animals are sometimes smarter than humans because
Yeah.
you're not supposed to eat at McDonald's, but
Yeah.
you do like yeah.
Yeah, there's one caveat to that as far as I just make sure that they have access to everything. They have access to choice. Now, if I was to
Yeah.
only feed them something, like, hey, this is all you get, then they're probably going to get sick on it, because it's
Yeah.
probably not that great for them and they're starving and they're going to eat
Right.
it anyhow.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I feed my chickens nightshades. They say, oh, don't
Yeah.
feed your chickens nightshades. They get all the tomato plants, they get all
Oh
the
gosh, yeah.
potato greens and all that, and they go crazy over them,
I'm so
and
glad
so
to hear it's not just me.
oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's just like,
Yeah.
they're fine, they lay eggs,
Yeah.
they're happy, they get out and do chicken things every day, so
Yeah. And I
it's
sometimes wonder who it is that decided what they are and aren't supposed to have. Like, did you ask the chicken? Did you like where did you come up with this? It's
Right.
become so scientific and like what is it
Yeah,
based on? It
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
another example of that is, I know that there's things that they say you're not supposed to and my daughter, she's a she's an equine vet, so if she hears me saying this,
Uh-oh.
she's gonna be, like, freaking out, but they say, "Oh, don't feed you got to feed them horse hay. You got to feed these animals horse hay." We had these horses, man, that would eat what the cows ate, right? And those cows were eating volunteer ryegrass that was
Yeah.
moldy, right?
Yeah.
That's because that's what
Yeah.
we could afford and that's what we
Right.
had.
Yeah.
And those horses were fine. We had one horse, Moon Tea, live till she was 34 years old, eating
Oh
what the
my
cows ate,
gosh.
right?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things where, you can read all this stuff. You can, pay attention to what
Yes.
you're saying not to do, and
Yep.
that's fine. I'm not telling you to not pay attention to that. I'm just
Right.
saying this is my experience. Take and do what
Yeah.
you will with your own animals,
Right.
but that's been my experience,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of
Right.
interesting.
I wrote an article about why we don't feed our chicks chick starter. And
Hmm.
I get in a lot of trouble for that article from a lot of people, but,
Mhm.
I remember I went to the feed store. We have a little local feed store that's, like, 2 miles from our house, and so that's the feed store that we support, and I went there, and they didn't have any chick starter, and I was like, "Oh, what am I supposed to feed, my chicks?" One of the guys pulled me aside, and he's like, you don't have to feed your chicks chick starter." Then he's
Mm-mm.
like, "Pay attention." He's like, "Have you ever had a mama hen with baby chicks?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "They're not eating chick starter, are they?" And I'm like, like it
Mhm.
all clicked then. And then I was researching when did chick starter become a thing? And like, it's just crazy. It's crazy all the stuff that, they'll feed to you and you don't question it. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That is 100% correct because anybody that's actually raised, any chicks will
Hmm.
watch that
Yep.
mom run around and peck and
Yep.
and and break it up, and the little ones come and do their
They're like,
thing.
oh, this is
It
her.
Yeah, we're unnecessary in that process, but
Absolutely.
we're necessary in that process, and then "Oh, you gotta put, this kinda, like, stuff in their water, and you
Yeah.
gotta do all this other stuff, and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah," and it's just like, "Man, I get
Yeah.
it."
Yeah.
Nutrition is important, but, like, that's over the top, man, at
Right.
least from
Yeah.
my standpoint, but
What did they do 30 years ago?
right. Yeah,
100 years ago? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, one thing I really like, man, is that barn you got. That is amazing.
It is
Where'd you come
amazing.
up with that barn? That you must have bought that place just for that barn, huh?
It's funny because we've been looking at a bunch of different properties, and this is probably the fourth place that so 3 places before this, the offers had actually fallen through or they'd been pulled off the market while we were in the process of buying it. And, stuff happens for a reason, but we came to this house, and the first thing that the realtor showed us, who was a friend of ours, the first thing he showed us, he's like, "You got to come see this barn." And we pull into the property. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And we go into the barn, and it hadn't been used in probably 20 years. So it's kind of, it needs some work. But I remember we walked through the barn, and then there's a ladder up to the hayloft. And I'm like, "Huh, there's a
Mm,
hayloft," and I climb up the ladder and I look into the hayloft, and I remember looking back at my husband, and we exchanged this look, and it was like, "Oh my God, like, are we seriously here?" So here's the funny thing. Then the realtor takes us in the house, and the house needed some love. Like, it didn't
mm.
have any flooring. It didn't have like it there was work that needed to be done before we moved into it. But I saw that barn, and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, this is where we're gonna live." So, and the cool thing about this property, we're the second family to live here. So the original family is the original family that built this farm, but the
Hmm.
barn actually got moved here in the 40s. The barn was built in 1918, and it was a couple miles away in a field. Nobody was using it in the 1940s. And so they actually bought the barn and loaded it on the back of a truck and brought it to this property and unloaded it. And the one of the boys that grew up here actually had pictures of the whole process. And so he gave me a book that was pictures of this whole process. And it is absolutely amazing to think that they moved that huge, ginormous barn here on the back of a truck in 1940, whatever it was. Like, oh my gosh. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, for anybody listening to this and you haven't seen Amy's barn, you should go check that out. I mean, go and look on her website,
Yes.
go and follow her channel and give that a look, man, because that's like that's just I love barns. And
Yeah.
that one there is just like,
Yeah.
man, that's so idyllic, it's just like it's
Yeah.
like picturesque and just picture perfect, little 5 acres. And you got that
Yeah.
silo, right? The grain
Yes.
silo next to it.
Yep. I
Wow.
love it. It's so great to look out the window every day and see that. It's just like, oh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys put any hay or anything up in that loft, or is it just kind of like a place for storage, or you don't have
The
anything up in there?
loft is still full of old hay
Oh, really?
from like a long time ago. And so we have
Huh.
like some of it was decent, and so we'd use it for bedding for different stuff. But what's up there now is just nasty. And so we've been trying to figure out how to get rid of it because we'd like to clean it out, and do some work up there. But everybody that we've called is like, nope, because it's not even bales. It's just loose because all the string has disintegrated, and it's just this
Mm,
mass of, so I don't know.
right.
I don't know what we're going to do about that, but it would be nice to clean it out. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that's very cool. My folks had a pretty neat barn. It was like 100 feet long, and
Yeah.
it was an old chicken barn. They
Hmm.
raised chickens on that property before my parents had it, and it was made out of old clear heart redwood.
Oh,
And it
wow.
just smelled so good on the
Yeah.
inside. And we used it for raising the livestock that we had, and then storing hay. And then for a time we converted it, and we raised veal calves in there and stuff like that. But yeah, old barns are so unique and neat. I just
Yeah.
wish actually that I had purchased a piece of property that had a barn on it, but my wife liked the house, so it's like, what are you going to
That's so awesome because I don't think it even would have mattered what the house was. After I
do?
saw that
Yeah.
barn, it could have been just a little tent. I wouldn't have cared. We could have lived in
Yeah.
the barn. I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. In fact,
It's-
when we first moved up from the city, when my parents bought the farm, there was no house on it, and we lived in the
Okay.
barn for,
Oh, really?
yeah, my dad framed in some
Yep.
rooms and stuff like that, and then,
Cool.
walls or whatever, and then we lived
Yeah.
in there while the house was being constructed. But yeah, barns are super cool.
They make the farm.
Yeah.
It is just, yeah. I love it. I love it. It's great.
So I see that you're back with Nicole doing the Spicy Sisters thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that going to be an ongoing regular
Yeah.
type
When
thing?
we started it was supposed to be once a month. And then
Mhm.
that girl took that job outside the home, and that kind of,
Right.
but yeah, we're back to it, and it's going to be once a month as the schedule allows. So
Right.
try to make it happen sometime in a month. So It's fun. She's
Well,
fun to talk to, and we get going. So
yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to you know, catching some of those episodes. So I enjoy listening to you guys kick it around back and forth.
yeah, it was fun to meet her. I got to speak at her spring workshop last year, so it was
That's
fun to
right.
finally meet her after having talked to her online for how many years, and so yeah,
Right.
it's always fun
Yeah.
to meet the people in the community.
Sure. Yeah. Are along those lines, are you going to be making any public appearances this year anywhere?
Not this year, which is a
Hmm.
bummer because I had 3 different places I was supposed to speak this year, and when my husband and I sat down and made the giant list of this is what we need to accomplish on the farm in 2023, I looked at that list and I was like, there is no way. There's no way that I can go speak at these places. And I'm bummed about that, but I feel like this year has to be rebuilding everything and getting it back to where it's supposed to be. And then next year, next year will
Right.
be the going to all the things. So
Right. So livestock, you're working on trying to add some livestock on the property. Plus, are you putting any infrastructure in, or are you working on
um,
planting anything, or along those lines?
we have a lot. We still have storm cleanup from a storm that came last year that we didn't get cleaned up because my husband, was in recovery. So we have trees down all over our pig pasture, and we didn't get pigs last year. So
Mm,
those trees just kind of laid. So we have a bunch of fencing that we need to fix. The duck and the chicken area, it's all like we just have a lot of infrastructure, I guess, that needs to be fixed, not necessarily added, but just brought back up to what it's supposed to be. I do want to we have a little red barn here, not the big red barn, but the little red barn that we have is where we keep our meat birds and our turkeys, and I want to make it so they can get outside because right now they've been inside. They have a ton of space, but they don't have access to the outdoors, and so I want to change it so they have access to the outdoors. So that is something that we're trying to figure out right now, the best way to make that happen. Um, what else? I don't know. We used to free range everything
hmm
when we moved here, and then after 3 years, there's so many predators here. We just had
mm,
such a huge predator problem, and so after about 3 years, we were like, "No, all we're doing is feeding the wildlife, and this is getting silly." So, um, everything that we have outside is in, like, it's all netted. Everything is covered runs all over,
hmm
so, um, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. What was your predator load? Were you losing them to coyotes or skunks or raccoons or all of the
Uh,
above?
Coyotes, fox, hawks, eagles, stray dogs, oddly enough.
Hmm.
We had a big problem with stray dogs, so
Yeah.
it's crazy. But I would say the worst of it was the hawks and the eagles that would come down and yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't really had much of an issue, to be quite honest, with my
Yeah.
chickens with aerial predators, but
Yeah.
and we haven't really lost any, because I got pretty good, infrastructure for them at night. I
Mhm.
think that's one of the areas that we as people who are doing animal husbandry, we owe it to the chicken
Oh, yeah.
if we're going to have chickens to make sure that you have them in an enclosure that doesn't like make them a sitting duck because they're
Right.
so vulnerable when they're
Yeah.
up on the roost. They're
Oh,
just going
yeah.
to get smoked.
Yeah.
So we've been pretty fortunate with that as far as the chickens, but we have a lot of coyotes and
Yeah.
we've wound up losing. I would say over the course of being here, we've probably lost 30 cats that we've had. And
Oh, really?
yeah, we just kind of
Yeah.
have given up with cats because
Yeah.
it's like you say, you get tired of feeding the coyotes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I never thought that aerial predators would be the thing that would be our biggest I never thought in all the I was thinking fox and raccoon and skunks and snakes and, all the things, but not hawks.
Yeah.
Not there's gonna be an eagle that comes down and, "Goodbye, chicken. Goodbye,
I
cat."
know. Yeah, that's
It's
brutal.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that on Instagram.
No, it's kinda weird. There's a lot of
Weird.
things they don't, like,
I know.
talk about. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Um, so what about, like, young Amy? What was young Amy's first job? What was your first job?
Oh my gosh, my first job?
Yeah.
My first job, I think technically is probably working in construction with my parents, because my parents
Mm,
owned a little construction company. So my sister and I would work with them in the summer.
yeah.
So that probably is technically my first job. But after that, probably waitress, probably
Oh,
at a little cafe in the little town.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I worked as a preschool teacher for a while before I was married. My life plan was to be in musical theater, actually.
Mm,
I was a theater nerd when I was growing
hmm.
up, and that was my whole thing. I was gonna be maybe not on Broadway, but, off
Huh.
Broadway, maybe. But,
Right.
yeah, I was all into music and singing and performing, and that was my whole thing. So,
Yeah.
maybe that's
So,
why I
so
like YouTube now.
yeah, yeah. What was the reason behind deciding to go in on homesteading? What was the impetus that drove you to that kind of,
Um
life decision?
I think I always had this issue with like, there was a split in my personality where I wanted to be on stage and traveling and being, doing all these shows, but then I also knew that I wanted to have a family and I wanted
Hmm.
to have children and I wanted to stay home with them. And, like, how do you make those 2 things? Like, those are 2 opposite things. Like, how do you make that work? And I don't know, then I met this really tall guy that I thought was pretty cute. And, the rest is history. I ended up, moving to a little town, and then we moved
Yeah.
to the country, and that's where we are now.
Right
And now
on.
my children are the performers and the musicians going out and doing all the things, and I get to smile and go, "Oh, well, I'm glad you get to do that." So,
Right on. Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. It's cool watching them grow up,
it is.
right?
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a trip.
It really
Huh.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking
So
in the
what's next
chat.
for you? What's next for you on the podcast? Do you
Oh, what's next? It's interesting because I took my little break and then I came back and now I feel like I almost feel like my brain is just because I have so many different directions I want to go. Because I feel like now I'm back, you know, and
Mhm.
so I feel comfortable here. Okay, so let's figure out what we're going to do with that. And I do still work at the job 1 day a week, which I
Mm,
consider to be kind of my brain break because when you're creating content from being at home and your life and everything you're doing, it's like mentally, I need a break to go, okay, we need to step out of that for a little bit because I think it actually makes me more productive. So I do still work there 1 day a week. Um, but
interesting. Yeah.
my husband and I had a chat the other day. It was kind of funny. He says, I don't understand why it is that you have all these followers that you have and you're not filming every single thing that we do on the farm. Like, why are you not like? Because we do so much stuff here. He's like, "You could be teaching all these people about, everything that we're doing, and you would love to do that, because that's, musical theater." I mean, maybe I should sing. Maybe I should sing all the things that I'm doing, and then that would really be musical theater.
Right.
I don't know. But long story short, he's like, like, make a go of it. Like, do all the things, like write all the things and make all the videos. And he's just very supportive of doing all that, which was really cool because I feel like in the past, and this is nothing he did, it was more me. I'm going to make a video now. And I think my kids and my husband are probably like, oh, great, mom's making a video again. Okay, whatever. And now to find out, they're like, Mom, why don't you make videos? Why don't you, like, why aren't you doing all this stuff? So it's almost like you have, their support and they're cheering you on. And I just, I have so many things I want to do that I don't even know what to tell you. I just,
Right.
you know, so many videos and podcasts and interviews and live streams and just all the things.
Yeah, right on. That's good. I look forward to, following along and seeing, where you're going with things. And for anybody that, like I said, hadn't checked out Amy's channel and her podcast, the links to all of that stuff is in the show notes to this. So I would encourage you to go take a look at that and see if maybe give her a follow
Yeah.
on your YouTube channel and elsewhere. One thing I haven't talked to you about that I wanted to ask is you are a author, and I understand that's quite a passion of yours. So maybe we can talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that. What do you write, and what do you write about?
I write about, well, I writing is something I feel like I've done since I was born. I don't remember a time that I ever didn't want to write. I've always written. And now I write under two names. I write under my real name, Amy Dingman. That's all the nonfiction stuff that I write. So I write about homeschooling. I just finished a homeschooling series called Homeschool Highway series. So that's, just journey of homeschooling and the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things you need to know, the real story. I wrote a book called Make Friends with a Dog, which is just kind of some deep thoughts. I wrote a book about frugal living and money conversations. So things like that. I'm working on a homesteading book too, but then I also write fiction under the name Shay Ray Stevens. So I write like psychological thrillers, literary thrillers, psychological fiction, things like that. So yeah. Split personality. That's what I am.
So do you find that to be a really good, like, kind of escape, writing that sort of thing? You can, like, your
Yeah.
alter ego, you can
Yeah.
just like another personality type of a
Yeah.
thing. Is that how you get into it?
Yeah. And I think that's why I have to write both, because when I'm writing one, like, it's really good that I have the other, because if I'm spending too much time in one or the other, it's, you got to have both.
Yeah, it's interesting. So
Yeah.
when you write, do you specifically sit down with a time and say, "Oh, I'm going to write," or is it just something that comes to you through inspiration? You're like, write it down on a napkin, and I got to remember that or whatever. Is that how
I
it comes to you, or what?
I think I still get lots of ideas where, I will write them down, but I think as I've gotten older, or as I've tried to make it more of a business thing, you have to you have to make it a business. You have to say, I'm going to write from these hours, and like, dedicate time to doing it. Like with anything else you're going to try and do content wise, you have to
Right.
like dedicate time to it, because if you're waiting for the muse, or you're waiting for inspiration, you're going to be waiting a long time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that maybe some people who don't do those sort of things don't really have a good understanding of how much time and etiquette, time and effort and
Yeah.
dedication it takes to, like, put out consistent content
Yeah.
or to create something, that's worth consuming. So,
Yeah, because you can just toss stuff out there, but it's it needs to be quality for it to go anywhere. So, and that takes time and planning and
right.
effort. And I was thinking about YouTube. Like, you can spend a lot of time on a YouTube video if you're gonna, do decent editing and add
Yep.
sound and add. Oh my gosh, it's a 5-minute video can take you 5 hours or
Yeah.
more. And I don't think people always get that. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. It's how do you manage the social media aspect of your life, because it's obviously a big part of seemingly all of our lives,
Yeah.
whether you're a content creator or just somebody who likes to consume it. It takes up a bit of your time. And so how do you manage that time, or how do you set time aside, or how do you, like, set boundaries, like, oh, I'm only going to do this during this time? Or because it, like I say, it can run away with you, man. Like,
Oh yeah.
you're either always checking for stuff that,
I
like,
know.
doesn't really matter, or the stuff
Right.
that you're actually trying to create can take more time than
Yeah.
you've got in a day to deal with. So how do you manage your time
So
on
for
that?
social media, like for content creation for social media, so for like a farmish kind of life, I generally will sit down on Sunday and I will plan out all the social media for the week, and I will schedule it out, and I will
Hmm.
do that on Sunday. So if you're seeing posts from me during the week, it was scheduled on Sunday. And then so
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about what I'm posting. And then during the week, I'm just collecting more stuff. I'm taking more pictures. I'm putting it in a file, like, oh, remember to talk about that. I generally will go through a list of blog posts, that I want to reshare, something that is pertinent to the time that we're in. And yeah. And so then during the week, I will check in every once in a while, usually early in the morning and then again at night, sometimes in the middle of the day, but usually early morning is when I'm on. Yeah, and there will be a post that will come out and I'll say, oh, that's right, that's what I posted today. And then have some conversations with people and comment on things and respond to people, because I think it's important to not just post. It's important to
Mhm.
have conversations and have that relationship. So But yeah, I have found that in order for me to have content out there, I have to plan it out, 'cause if that's the only I would be spending all my time thinking about social media and what to put on there if I didn't have that kind of system figured out.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think that's something I could probably stand to do a little bit better job of, like, having, specific plan about, all these ideas that you got or
yeah.
whatever. And yeah, it's not really how I operate. Maybe it would be better if I did, but I don't know. Things are
I think
working.
different things work for different people though,
Mhm.
it's there isn't one system that's the the go-to for everybody, and I think it
Right.
depends on where you are in life and what's going on and, you know, yeah.
Yeah, time management is obviously a big aspect
Yeah.
of trying to get things done. I know with myself, I find myself around here a lot of times, you know, you get to the end of the day and you're like, "What did I do today?" I mean, like, seems like I didn't get anything done, but, like, I'm going,
But
like,
you
all
did.
day. Yeah, oh, totally. Like,
Right.
moving
Yeah,
the ball every
right.
day,
Yeah,
and it shows over time, but, like, sometimes it just feels like, "Man, like, I didn't get anything done today." So yeah,
yeah,
time management is a big one because,
yeah.
we only have so many hours,
And I
but,
think that has something to do with the fact where, when I decided I was gonna try taking this job outside the home, which was supposed to be a full-time job, right? My husband was like, how like, he didn't wanna say, "Don't do this," but he said,
mhm,
"How are you gonna balance all the stuff that you already do with taking this job?" And I think, like what you said, you get to the end of the day and you don't even realize everything that you've done. And so
mhm.
I'm thinking, I could do a full-time job and take care of the farm and do a farm, like I can do all that because I don't think you even realize everything that you're doing. And
Yeah,
then when you're not at home, you're like, "Wait a second, now I realize everything I was doing." Like, now it's obvious because it's not getting done, so that's so crazy. How do we go through the whole day doing all the things and not realize all the all the things we're doing, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's
Um, how do you I know this is probably, something that most people in content creation or that put themselves out there, have to consider or deal with, but how do you deal with, being out in the public? What are the drawbacks that you find as far as putting yourself, out there for
yeah,
people to
yeah.
see? What are some of the things that, are problematic or drawbacks in your opinion?
I think if you are going to be someone who puts yourself out there, what I have had to learn is when people comment to what you do or comment on something you posted or have an opinion about the video that you just put out, that comment has more to do with them than it has to do with you.
Mhm.
Because you can say the sky is blue and you will get 10 different people responding to you in 10 different ways. And it has nothing to do with the sky is blue. It has to do with if they were crabby when they got out of bed, if they were just in a fight, if they're having a really good day. And so wrapping my head around that and understanding all the comments that I'm getting, whether they're good or bad, they really have more to do with the commenter than they do with me. That has taken a lot of the sting out of, some of the comments that, are less than awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think you have to have stuff that you don't share. You have to have something that's still just for you, and you have to figure out where that boundary is, I guess, for yourself. But
Mhm.
if you're putting everything out there, it feels like your whole life is on display and you have nothing just for you and your family anymore. So I guess
Right.
figuring out where that boundary is for you, which is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think those are the two things I have figured out thus far in social media life. But
Yeah. I
yeah.
think I think that there's, a majority of people, I mean, probably I wouldn't necessarily say it's just in the homesteading genre or whatever, but typically people that are homesteaders kind of want to be away from people. That's why they're homesteaders. That's why they
Yeah.
have their property and their space. So they want that space unto themselves rather than being
Mhm.
right up on top of people. So there's an element of that.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's something that everybody kind of has to navigate,
Yeah.
because in order to function in this world, to some extent, you have to put yourself out there in
Oh, yeah.
one way or the other. And
Yeah.
you can either hide away from it saying, "Oh, I don't want, Google to know where they know everything anyhow, man."
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
So I think we have to use technology to our advantage,
Yeah.
to our own benefit while
Yeah.
we can,
Yeah.
for as long as we can, until something changes. But
Right.
yeah, I agree that there's things that you have to withhold, obviously,
Yeah.
but there is that element of people out there that want nothing more than just to get a reaction out of you,
Oh,
or
yeah.
to have
Yeah.
something to say, or have somebody else to comment. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I really have enjoyed about YouTube, and I don't know how many people know of this function, but it's a really awesome function. It's something I use anytime I get a sour comment, is I'll just hide them from my channel.
Mm.
It's very simple,
Yeah.
because what it winds up doing is they think that their comment is still there. They
Right.
can still see all of my posts. I
Right.
haven't deleted them or
Right.
banned them. They're still going to interact with my channel trying to get a reaction out of me, but I'll never see their shit again.
Right.
You understand how that works? And so
Yeah.
what's brilliant about that on YouTube's part is YouTube doesn't want to block people, because that cuts
Mhm.
down on watch time. The only thing
Yeah.
YouTube cares about is watch time. They want
Right.
human beings watching their platform so they
Right.
can sell more ads. So it's
Yeah.
actually brilliant on their part.
It is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we benefit on it as well, because that person who's an asshole
Yeah.
winds up still showing up on
Right.
your channel, sitting
Yeah.
there going, "Hey, blah, blah, blah," and they're the
Keyboard
only ones that will
warrior.
ever see it. You know what I mean?
It's
So
perfect.
so that's how I deal with it, and,
Yeah.
I don't have time to deal with negativity.
Yeah.
If people wanna, have constructive comments, I can interact with that, but,
Yeah.
that's how I deal with it. And it's like I
Mhm.
say, I have no time for people that want to just
Right.
argue something, or, make a point or something, in a smart ass way. If it's
Right.
respectful, I'll
Right.
certainly entertain that, but I have
Yeah.
no time for people who are wasting mine. So
Yeah.
that's how you deal with that. It's awesome.
I always think it's interesting how it it's amazing to me how many people, they don't actually wanna have a conversation about something. They don't actually want to learn about something. They just wanna make a smart ass comment. They just wanna get their 2 cents in there. They don't want to be enlightened, or like yeah. And it amazes me how much time people have on their hands to do that.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. But,
Clearly, they don't have chickens to take pictures of, right?
I know, man, those chickens, they'll wear you out.
You can dress them up, do your
Oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous, man.
It
So
really is.
cool. Um, I gotta ask you this though. I ask most everybody this that they come on the show, and I ask
Okay.
mostly about everyday carry. And it's not like, hey, what pistol do you carry or whatever, but
Yeah.
everybody carries something every day, right?
Yeah.
I would think most people carry, whether it's your purse or whether it's
Uh-huh.
your something in your pocket or whatever.
Yep.
So what is that one thing that you carry, that really you carry every day that you can't be without? Or maybe even if that's not an easy enough question to answer, maybe focus it specifically when you go out and you put your coveralls on the farm. What is that thing that goes with you?
You know what immediately comes to mind, and this just seems so silly, but it has saved my ass so many times. I always, 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 always have my phone with me, because I
Hmm.
can't tell you the times I have been locked inside of a coop, or I have, God forbid, I fall on the ice, or like there has stuff that has happened, and I don't have my phone. Like, I just wanna be able
Hmm.
to call to my husband or call to my kids to be like, "I am locked inside the duck coop and I cannot get out. Will you come out here?" You know? And so it always seems like the times I forget my phone, that is when it happens. It's almost like fate. That's always what happens. So it seems silly because, like back in the day, people were like, "Oh, you can't go anywhere without your phone." But it's a communication device. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and I'm not 20 anymore. So, like walking around on the ice, walking around,
Yeah.
there's
Oof.
so many things. I just, like locally, I've heard of so many things happening to people on the farm and just,
Yeah.
they've fallen in the barn or they whatever, and they lay there for 4 hours till somebody, and so, yeah, when I go out of my house, I always, always, always have my phone. As
Yeah.
silly as that sounds, that's,
No, I don't think that's silly at all. I think that's probably most people's first, their go-to, and it's not maybe because of the reasons you've just
yeah.
cited. It's more, hey, I want to like look at
I wanna
whatever.
take a picture of my chickens for Instagram.
Yeah, selfies and, looking at
Yeah,
social media or whatever.
yeah,
But
right.
it's interesting how we've become so attached to that tether,
Yeah,
which essentially it kind of is. It's essentially a tracking device which lays
right,
down where you're
right.
at all times and
Yeah,
records everything that you do.
mhm,
But it is such a convenient tool. We've become very used to being able to like, oh, I haven't heard from so and
yes,
so
yep,
I'm starting to get nervous. They
yep,
haven't called me, or if I've called them and they didn't pick it up right
yep.
away. And it's like years ago, obviously that wasn't the case, right?
I
We had
know,
like
I
we
know.
had cords and phones in the house, right? And
Right.
I don't know, it's just different now, the level of
It is,
connectivity we
and
have.
it's so crazy because, like, just last night, my oldest son was, a couple hours away north, and they got a crazy snowstorm. I think they got 14 inches of snow in this snowstorm, and he was gonna be coming home, and I thought, "You know what? I can track him on my phone and know if he's on the
Mhm.
road, if he's still where he said he was gonna be, like, is he in the ditch somewhere in this storm?" And I think, you know what? When I was younger, if I like, my parents had no way to know, and isn't that crazy how life has changed? Like,
Yeah,
we can just look on our phone. There's my kids, there's my husband, there's, whoever you've got. It's so crazy. Like, what did we do before? And how does
right.
it become so normal?
Yeah,
It's
I
like a
know it's
thing now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this will seem antiquated in, a very short period of time as the technology continues to
Yes.
evolve.
Right.
But a funny little story to the phone thing is, yesterday I'm out on a run, right? I got my phone in my belt and I'm
Yep.
running and stuff, getting my exercise, and I get home and I'm like, all right, whatever. I check my phone and it's like off, and I'm like, I didn't think the battery was dead. So I plug it in, and of course it starts charging up. And then when I
Yeah.
try to turn it on, I turned it on, and I inadvertently was pushing buttons and I did a factory reset on my
Oh my god.
phone. Yeah, and I lost
Oh.
everything. I lost all my videos, all my pictures. I had a YouTube video that was going to be for the 25th of this month that was all done. I just needed to do a few final edits. It was like a 12-minute video, long form, right? And so all of
Gosh.
that footage, all of that stuff is just vaporized, man. It's gone. And it's
That is
just like,
horrible.
yeah, it
Oh.
sucks, but whatever, man. I mean, like, I was kind of pissed at
Oh.
first, and then I was just like, whatever. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'll
Right,
just
but
make another damn
still.
video. But
Oh. Oh.
technology, man. Oh,
Yeah. It's crazy to think what it'll be in 5 more years, 10 more years.
yeah. It's kind of scary, actually, the things that they're thinking of, trying to implement and all that. But
Yeah.
there's really nothing we can do other than just try
Right.
to navigate the best we can,
Yeah.
and be nimble
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
provide for our own needs that we can see that are something we can control. So
Right.
looks like you're doing a lot of that on your property, doing the
Trying.
homesteading thing. I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's
Trying,
super
that's
cool.
all you can do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool, Amy. It's been good chatting with you. I think we've covered a lot of ground in the
Yeah.
conversation. Is there anything you want to add toward the end, or you're tapped out?
I can't think of anything. It's amazing
Okay.
how the light has changed during we started and the sun was
Yeah.
still out, and now it's
Yeah,
all
it's
this
dark.
mood lighting going on.
Yeah,
I should have
it's
turned on more lights when
yeah,
I
it's
wasn't thinking of that.
still light here, but
Oh, I suppose.
yeah. You're 2 hours behind, right? You're central still?
Yeah, it is just after 8 o'clock here, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, my daughter was doing part of her internship at Minnesota State University,
Okay.
and so we wound up coming out there to see her and
Yeah.
stuff. I actually really liked Minnesota. It was kind of a nice place. It
Yeah.
seemed to me like it was nice, and it seemed to me also like the people were nice. I know they
Yeah.
say Minnesota nice or whatever, but it just seemed like you know, because man, I don't know, man. I'm from like California, and
Yeah,
there's nice people here. I'm not saying there isn't, but it's just a different level of
different.
like kind of nice, right?
Yeah. I've never been
Um,
to California, so I don't know, but I
mhm,
don't know. I like Minnesota. Otherwise, why would I stay here when we have
right.
37,000 inches of snow? But
Yeah.
I like it.
Are you a native? I didn't ask you
Yeah.
that. Are you
Yep.
born
Yep.
there in Minnesota?
Yep.
You don't have enough of an accent for me to ascertain that.
I didn't even realize I had an accent until I started podcasting, and I would listen back and I'd be like, "Oh, there's the long O that they talk about."
Yeah, couple of words that,
Every
you
once in a while, I'm like, "Oh boy."
yeah, it's all
Sometimes I
good.
almost sound Canadian. I almost sound like him, sometimes.
I know. Talking about your garage, huh?
Yeah, I'm not that bad.
You pasta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, Tim's a good dude. I had him
He's
on. He was
awesome.
actually my first podcast that I had
I saw
on.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, he inspired me to kind of go and do some content creation from
yeah.
what I saw him speak about at Self-Reliance Festival. So
He's a very inspiring guy. I like
yeah,
chatting with
yeah,
him.
he's high energy and go-getter. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's a good guy.
He's good stuff.
Right on. Well, thanks again, Amy, and thank you for everybody that showed up in the chat, and thank you for everybody that may listen to this after the fact, and you may wind up going and seeing what Amy has to offer in the show notes. But she's from a farmish kind of life, and she's doing big things out there in Minnesota. And I thank you again for having the time to spend with us.
I was glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Okay,